Hello, everyone, and welcome to another My Music. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, and whatever you're doing now that you're listening to this. In a minute, I'm going to be speaking to Bella, who's sit in front of a lot of albums that I have in my record collection on the wall. And we will probably discuss those and many other artists as well as we find out about her musical journey through life. But first, this little video from the wonderful people at Analog Trash.
Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop. Keep on, don't stop.
Bella, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and
Thank you for
talking
having
to
me.
today. No, it's an absolute pleasure. Where did music start for you? What's your first experience of music that you can remember?
I think my first ever experience is we were doing Christmas carols at school, and we were doing 12 Days of Christmas, and I was the person who sang "And a Partridge in a Pear Tree," which
So
if
you
you
said
know
that a
the song,
lot.
you do it a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt quite proud that I was the one who got to sing it, 12 times or however many times it is in the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first ever memory.
Wow. The great thing about that particular part in that particular song is no doubt once the audience got warmed up, they sang along with you, did they?
That's true. I think they
There you
did. Yeah.
Yeah. So not only did you have arguably the best part in that whole performance, but you learnt the wonderful thing of audience participation and audience kind of acceptance very early on.
Completely.
Yeah. That's wonderful. When did you first start actually writing music?
So I sort of started teaching myself piano when I was about 8, and my first song I wrote when I was 9. And it was not very good. But I
Do you
have
know
a
what?
sort
I
of,
wish I had. Listen, I just got to stop you there. I wish I had £1 for every time any musician that's been on said about their first songs it wasn't very good.
well,
I think one day what should happen is we should actually get together a whole load of musicians, especially when you all get famous, and we should re-record all of your first songs and we should put them on an album, and we should call it,
that's a cool idea.
wouldn't it? And we should call it My First Song. They weren't very good. My first song, they weren't very good.
I do have a fondness for it though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think of it as a masterpiece, but I do think, oh, that's quite sweet that opened up this whole world that I think I got better at, and that's just sort of changed my life.
Yeah. I think any artist, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, right? But I think any artist that doesn't think that the latest thing that they've done is better than anything else they've ever done is probably not a true artist. They're probably not progressing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also quite human. Like, I'm 23, so the scientists would say my frontal lobe is not fully developed. So I think I'm more intelligent and mature and just a better person every year that goes by. I don't know if that keeps on going and going, but I think there's something quite human about taking your present as the highest point. It's also very nice if your present is the highest point, because it means things aren't going downhill.
I think that's a really interesting one, because I can tell you now as a 52-year-old, I think there's a point in your life where you stop necessarily getting there in terms of the intellect because it starts going the other way. But maybe wisdom takes over.
Yes. Yeah. I can
So
imagine.
I think there's an element by which And I also think for a long while you really care and you really care and then you really care and then you realize that however much you care, and you really do want to make a difference, that there's just some things that you just can't make a difference about, or however much you care, it just ain't going to change anything. So, and maybe I think at a certain age you stop giving a damn as well, and maybe that then releases another element of freedom to you.
I'm sure.
So,
sure.
I think it's a lovely life's a lovely roller coaster ride for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the greatest thing you've ever learned as a musician so far?
God, that's a tough question. I think I've learned very recently that there's no urgency. Music isn't, I'm not in a corporate world, let's say. I'm not in a world where there's a clock on me. I guess I'd say there is a bit of, you want to get your big break when you're super young and fresh and whatever. But actually, I realized, this is really, really recent realization, but I was just like, there's no urgency. And I think I was having this chat with my mum, and we basically said, I am an artist. It's not like I'm going to become an artist. People say, maybe I'll become a more successful artist or a more known artist. But right now I can just own that. I am an artist and I just need to do my art. I realized that. And it was like, this is actually quite simple.
Yeah.
Which is odd, because when you have all the PR and the marketing and the business strategies and everything that goes into being a musician that isn't music, you can get quite overwhelmed and quite confused, and it's not great for your psyche, I don't think, some of that stuff. But then you just realize, wait, I can do all that stuff that I need to do, and then I just do my art. That's yeah. That's what I
was actually I recorded one of these yesterday with a guy called Cam Fletcher, who was around at the time that sort of Nirvana started as well. They actually, his band played with Nirvana, and he very shortly after that decided to give up what then became grunge, right? And he said that he was in a shop with his wife or whatever, and he picked up a copy of Vogue, and he saw all of these friends of his from the scene that were actually in Vogue, and it was talking about the grunge scene or whatever. And at that point, he'd already decided to, because he had a young family and whatever, he decided to sort of like move into film and scoring and stuff like that. And so that just didn't happen for him, right?
Yeah.
And he said he was burnt out anyway.
Right.
But music's just been a constant there for him, and now he's coming, more of my age, he's coming back out and he's writing music again, and he's kind of enjoying it in a completely different way. And I think when you hear stories like that, you realize exactly what you've just said, that you are an artist, and you just, whether the fame bit comes or not, for artists, it sometimes it just happens along the way. It might only take one song, might take that song then getting into a film or an advert or whatever, and then suddenly fame's upon you. And I've had lots of chats with people over the years on here where suddenly they get that one song, and then but then all of the expectations on the one song. I think it's nicer when it happens by accident, don't you? I think if you're going to be an artist, make the art that you want to make, and take the right people along the ride with you. But if the fame bit suddenly happens, just let it be an accident.
I've always said to my friends and my family, and I don't think they quite get it, but if I got a break from a song that I didn't believe in, that's probably the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, right.
If suddenly I made a song that was a bit half-hearted and it was a bit maybe too poppy for my style or whatever it is, just I didn't think it was a great song. And then
Yeah.
suddenly the world's like, whoa, I'd be like, oh God, it'd be so bad.
Yeah. Do you love it when you hear stories that are like the counter of that? Where, I mean, very recently, a journalist got REM back together again.
Oh, right.
You got the guys back together in a room just to talk about retrospectively their career.
I think I
And why
watched that.
did you? Yeah, and
Is it the thing about losing my religion? Right.
right. Yeah, so you saw that bit where like, and the whole band talk about that particular song and the fact that like they thought it was a great song, but none of them
Yeah.
thought it was a single. None of them
No.
thought it was going to blow up in the way that it did.
Yeah.
Just did,
Yeah.
you know? And they had momentum behind them as a band, sure, but
Yeah.
that just blew them into a different stratosphere.
Completely.
But I like the fact that, you know, I love the fact when you hear that story as well, I love the fact it was kind of an accident.
Yeah.
You know? I think that's the best way to go. I think that's kind of like
Yeah, completely.
yeah.
Can't plan these things.
No, you can't plan these things. Who did you, as a young youngster, sort of looking up at the stars and thinking about music, who did you aspire to be like?
Well, my main inspiration from for a very long time has been David Bowie. I think there's something about the reinventing that's just seems very natural and human, but that some artists don't do. Some artists kind of try and stick to a mold, which isn't a bad thing. That might be who they are. But there was something about Bowie just being able to be like he went up, I think it was in 72 or 73, and he just announced, his band didn't know, and he just said, this is my last show as Ziggy Stardust. And then everyone's like, oh, and the Spiders from Mars are like, yikes. But, you know, he just knew that there were eras and that they'd come to an end, and, you know, he'd have all of his alter egos die eventually. And I don't think that in my own artistry that's as extreme. There's, you know, it's not like I put on one costume for 6 months and then another costume for 6 months. But I think in terms of just realizing you can evolve, and the music doesn't really, I mean, because it's coming from one person, it is going to be relatively consistent, because there's a limit to human imagination, I guess. But at the same time, you don't have to stick to exactly what either has worked before or that you've liked before. And I don't know, I find it very liberating how Bowie sustained such a long career with so many changes.
Do you get bored quite easily yourself in terms of
very much so. Yeah.
What then sparks your interest again? Is it for you, is it taking time away from your instrument and you know, doing something else, or going to a different place, or is it can it even be just approaching the way that you write or what you write on in a completely different way?
I think it's, for me, writing's definitely not that sort of methodical. It's very random, and the thing that will just spark a song in me, well, it's very intangible, but they'll just, you know, I might have something very significant happen in my life and I might not write a song about it, and then I'll have a conversation with someone at a party, and I'll think, there's something in that. You know, my latest song, I just had this lyric. I was at my friend's house and they've got this friend's flat, sorry, and they've got this incredible rooftop that you see London from. I mean, it's crazy. And I just thought 23 on a rooftop, that's a good lyric. And I quite like using ages in my song because it can kind of give a timestamp. And then I actually then went on holiday to Los Angeles, and then I was just writing there, and it just came out. And it's like completely different. I was writing it in LA, had the party been in London, but it's really, I've never really worked it out myself of why I would write a random song about conversation with someone I don't know very well, you know, and then go through breakups and not write songs about them. It's, you know, it's kind of weird.
Do you exercise that as a muscle at all? I mean, I write a poll, for better or worse, every morning on
really?
LinkedIn. Yeah, every morning. I've done it for 4.5 years now. Haven't missed a single day.
Wow.
And I sometimes I know the night before exactly what I'm going to talk about and what I'm going to ask about, etc. And other times I will literally come down in the morning to make a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or whatever, and I'll just see something.
Yeah.
And I'll just go, I'm writing about that. And it can be the most obscure thing.
Yeah.
But I also like finding a way of making the most obscure thing something that is probably more approachable for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I exercise that. So do you find ways of exercising that, or are you just happy for it to just happen accidentally when it happens?
I think sometimes one of the ways I exercise it is through poetry. So if it's not, sometimes the inspiration isn't song worthy for me, and I'll just write little poems, little lines. It can be 2 lines, it might be, 14 or whatever, but yeah, I'll write little things and I won't put it to music, and it feels like it's enough. It's just a poem.
Yeah.
I was writing a blog a while ago as well, and I'm quite good at, sitting down and creating inspiration. But funnily enough, that's not something that's ever really translated well into my songs. So with poetry and, prose or creative writing, whatever, I'm pretty good at plucking stuff out of nothing. But with songs, there's got to be substance. That's for me. There's something about, there's got to be an intensity to a song, I think. When you read a blog post, you don't necessarily want intensity. You want a sort of summary of events and maybe a bit of humor, maybe a bit of poetry, sort of poetic lines and whatever. But, when you listen to a song, it has to have some level of intensity. I think that's what I look for in other music, in music that I listen to. It doesn't, the instruments don't have to be intense. The lyrics don't have to be intense. Even the melody could be quite simple, but there's got to be something in there that draws me in, and so it's something emotional that's there.
You've got a clip on Instagram at the moment from another interview that you've given recently, and you're being asked about your voice, which is a tremendous voice. So I'm going to ask the sort of antithesis of that question,
right?
Rather than ask you about where you found that voice or whatever. As someone that was a singer in a band many years ago, what's the bit of your voice, or what's the thing in your voice that you don't like? Or what's the bit you've had to work on?
The bit I've had to work on. I think sometimes I get this weird thing that, and I don't know if it's because I'm close to my own voice, because I hear it when I talk and I hear it when I sing. But sometimes when I sing a bit lower, I think it sounds like I'm talking.
Right.
But then I listen to it again and I'm like, no, it doesn't. It sounds like you're singing.
But when it's coming out,
yeah, I mean, it's coming out, but there's something about certain low melodies, especially if they're quite like they're quite staccato almost. The lyrics are not, it's not a super flowing line, which works sometimes. And I don't know, I'll be like, am I just talking? So I've kind of had to work on that. And because if you think you're talking, then sometimes you
end up talking.
You end up talking, or you're out of tune, or you just don't have the singing switch flipped on in your brain. But I guess also because I'm classically trained in singing, I'm obviously not using my classical voice in my work, and I much prefer singing sort of normally. But another thing is the break, they call it passaggio, the passage in Italian, and that's always been. There's a sort of school of thought called bel canto who believe that women should smooth over their break in a way that men, it's a bit different. And I kind of, opera singers will hate me for saying this, but I slightly believe in a female falsetto. And so when I was trying to smooth that break all the time, it was quite a lot of effort. And I think my attitude now is just look after your voice, but also let it be and let it do what it needs to do. And I think when I've discovered good things about my voice, it's always been through discovering the bad things first and then correcting them. But yeah, being loose and relaxing and just letting, you've got to sit in a room with no one there and try to sing every note. I mean, when I was a kid, I had convinced myself, and I don't think this can be true, but I convinced myself I could sing from sort of F below middle C up all the way to the end of the piano. Wow. I don't know why I thought I could do that. Yeah. It might have been whistle tones or something. But I would try everything, and that obviously didn't sound very good at certain points.
I think, and you'll probably acknowledge this, I think that for any vocalist over time, as your voice changes and matures, and you then find a different resonance in different parts of your voice, which you then bring out. I think you lose some of the inhibition with that as well. And actually, sometimes you just go, do you know what? I'm only here once. I'm going to push it a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because actually, I want to achieve this emotion at this point in this song with my voice. And, especially if you've been classically trained, some people might go, you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah,
but it's the same people as. Did you ever get this? Did you ever get this then in school, or as you were learning, sort of like where you would play stuff at the piano and whatever, and someone would go, "Can't put that chord with that."
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole of music theory. I remember doing my grade 5 music theory, which you had to do grade 6 singing or whatever. But it's great to have. I think it's like, understand the wheel so you can break it. I think that's the
so
idea.
You can let them fall off. Yeah. Who's been for you, other than Bowie, who's been an artist over the years that you felt has managed to kind of let the wheels fall off in terms of music, and has taught you something about actually maybe dissonance or something about structure that you've gone, oh my God, that's brilliant. I need to.
He's behind me. He's here. It's Jeff Buckley. I remember I actually studied a Jeff Buckley song. I studied Grace for GCSE. It used to be on the GCSE syllabus. And I then suddenly, my own writing, I was like, I'm not going to follow any pattern here. I'll write in C and then suddenly add an E major chord or whatever it was, and I would do something a little bit more interesting. And also, he's so good at linking sections. I mean, unbelievably good at linking sections. And if he wants you to feel surprised, you'll feel surprised. And I think it was recently that some kind of anniversary of his death. I'm not sure. Was it 1994 or I'm not? Or 1998? I don't know. But I saw an article recently talking about his death. But he just had this ability to weave everything together but still surprise you. So it wasn't like, oh, that was a clunky link. It was like he wanted me to feel that everything's purposeful with Jeff Buckley. And that, that's what I love about that music.
Surprises are always great in songs.
Yeah.
Always wonderful.
Yeah.
You've been a great conversation today. Thank you so much for joining me, even if as it is for a very short period of time. If people want to go and explore your music, where should they start?
I think Spotify's a safe bet, or whichever streaming platform they.
Which song though? Which song?
Which song? My favourite song that's out is "Drink with Me," so I think they should start with that one.
That's where they shall go and do it. Then they shall go and start with "Drink with You," and that's the place we will ask everyone to go and explore. Yeah. And if you do enjoy Bella's music, please do not just listen, but go and say hello. Say what how you've been touched by the music, because that's really what makes an artist come alive is when they get the feedback for what they've spent hours doing, and it's the important bit. What's the big ambition as you go out of this year and into next year? What are you planning ahead of you in the next 6 months or so?
I basically, with the album coming out in September, I just can't wait to start on a new project. I feel like, I've been quite tied to a lot of these songs and I love them, but I can't wait to start collaborating with more people and finding a slightly newer sound for me. And yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Cool. Well, if anyone fancies collaborating with Bella, do let us know. I know there's a lot of musicians that watch this, so if there is a producer that you mainly want to work with, or anyone?
It can be co-writes, producing, anything.
There you go. The challenge has been thrown down. The gauntlet has been dropped. Thank you so much for joining me, Bella. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for music as well. It's absolutely tremendous. Folks, this has been the wonderful Bella Gate. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please do share amongst your friends and family. And do check out Bella's music. We'll be back with more My Music very soon. Until then, bye for now.